All right, Chip Brown with us. Chip Brown 247 is where you find him on Twitter. Read him at horns247.com. Hear him all over the place. Great guy, friend of the show. He's on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. And a lot of you are going out to Chip's part of the country this weekend. Chip, how are you, man?
Oh man, I love college football for games like this.
Oh, so good. What is the general? I've got a friend that lives in Austin, and he called me the other day. He goes, I have not heard one talk show, one person, nobody around me thinks that Texas stands a chance in this game. Now, he may have a bad sample. What is the general feeling among Texas fans about this upcoming game?
That Texas has no chance of winning this game. No, but here's the thing. Texas fans look at that A&M Alabama game last year and say, if Zach Calzada, who's not even on a two-deep at Auburn, right?
Right.
If Zach Calzada can beat Alabama, then why not Texas? So, it's fascinating. I think Steve Sarkisian has tried to convince his guys that he knows the tendencies of Nick Saban and Pete Golding, and he's been in the room with them, and Jeff Banks knows stuff because they were all there in 2020 together. But Alabama's defense went up against Steve Sarkisian's offense every day in practice. So it's it's going to come down to who's up for the big moment, who can make the big play. And Texas has got no pressure whatsoever. I mean, no one thinks they can win this game. So if you can't get up for Alabama and come out with your hair on fire, then Steve Sarkisian's got bigger problems.
Yeah, I know, and you and I talked the other day that there's Texas fans that point to that A&M game last year, but I think Alabama fans would point to Arkansas last year, a team that had Texas down 33-7 and ran for 333 yards on that defense. I know the defense, Chip, is going to be improved this year, but how improved is it?
Yeah, to me, that's what I've been harping on all offseason. Everyone talks about Quinn Ewers and the freshman starters on the offensive line. I'm like, if Texas can't stop the run, they're going to get run. And this is the moment of truth. This is, Gary Patterson came in as a special assistant. That guy loves to get in the film room and, come up with game plans starting, right after spring football. And he's been working on Alabama since May. So let's see if Pete Kwiatkowski and Bo Davis and this defensive staff, A, can get on the same page, and B, communicate that to their players. They've made some adjustments in the offseason. DeMarvion Overshown is going to come off the edge. He came off the edge against Louisiana Monroe last week and looked good doing it. Had a 6-yard tackle for loss that probably should have been counted as a sack. But the big thing that Sarkisian's been harping on is playing more man coverage on the outside so that they can bring a safety down to help stop the run or help get more pressure on the quarterback. Well, you bring in 6'3" corner Ryan Watts from Ohio State for this game because you're going to have to come up with some extra things to beat Alabama. You're not going to be able to beat them straight up. So let's see if Texas can play man on the outside and try to get to Bryce Young before Bryce Young gets to them.
Quinn Ewers had not played a lot of football recently, so last week was it looked like basically a vanilla game plan to dominate Louisiana Monroe. He only threw it 24 times. Bijan didn't do a whole lot either, just 71 quick yards, and he's out. Everybody's pointing to this game. Alabama did the same thing. But for Quinn Ewers, Alabama fans hadn't seen a lot of him. What kind of quarterback is he? Is he a guy that can beat Alabama with his legs? Were you impressed with his arms? Tell me when you finally got to see Quinn in the game, what was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was a rough early impression. His second pass was a terrible decision pass that was intercepted. And I think Texas fans were like, uh-oh. But he completed 8 straight after that, played a clean game. He can run. Now, he didn't run. And Bryce Young, I think him running for 100 yards last week was like, oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's a problem. But Quinn Ewers, the thing they like about him is that the guy can take a punch and respond. And that was the big question about Hudson Card. He took a punch in that Arkansas game and he didn't respond. It was a 3-and-out-a-thon. So, Quinn Ewers responded. He did not connect on a deep ball, and that is something that everyone has pointed to as being something that he's gifted in doing. And so I don't think there's any doubt Sark is going to want to try to get Quinn Ewers and Xavier Worthy connecting on a deep ball, probably on the first drive of the game. And so, I think Quinn Ewers showed some moxie, but it was Louisiana Monroe. Now he goes way up in class. He's never seen speed like this Alabama defense, not even close. Remember, his last start before last week was his junior year in high school at South Lake Carroll. So he's going way up in class here. And so we'll see if he can get the game to slow down at all.
Chip Brown is with us, horns247.com. At Chip Brown 247 is where you follow him on Twitter. He's on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. There will be no Jaleel Billingsley in this game unless something has changed I'm unaware of, Chip. And Jai Hall, I know, is eligible to play. Do you expect to see him?
No, I do not expect to see a Jai Hall. I think he's still earning his way back onto the field. He'll be dressed out. He'll go through warm-ups like he did last week, but I don't think you'll see him on the field during the game.
And still no Billingsley, right? Nothing has changed.
Right, no Billingsley.
Okay.
He's suspended for the first 6 games of the season.
Yeah,
due to an NCAA issue stemming from the end of last season at Alabama.
Chip, you and I kind of had this discussion too, talking about the Texas brand the other day, and if you could sum it up, what has happened? So from 2000 to 2009, Texas won a national championship. They played for another. They were 110-19, the second best record in the FBS behind only Boise State in that decade. Since that time, they've had 110 win season, and they've got a 556 winning percentage, which is 54th in the FBS. You've been following the program. If you could sum up what the difference between the decades is, what is it?
Well, it was the chaos that ensued after that 2009 national championship game. Mac Brown drove out of the Rose Bowl, dog cussing his coaching staff for not having a running game to fall back on when Colt McCoy got hurt. And he tried to change the offense from a spread offense with Garrett Gilbert, who'd only been a spread quarterback in high school, to a power running game with no offensive line and a 231-pound fullback, essentially, Cody Johnston, as the tailback. And they couldn't make first and goal from the 1 against Rice in the opener in 2010, and it went sideways. And then when the big money guys thought that Mac Brown had lost his fastball and wanted to try to go talk to Nick Saban, Mac convinced Steve Patterson, the new athletic director, who was hired basically to fire Mac Brown. Mac convinced Steve Patterson to keep him. Well, that was not what the big money guys had in their plans. And so it was an ugly divorce. Patterson wouldn't listen to the big money guys when he hired Charlie Strong. They actually wanted Jimbo Fisher after they couldn't talk to Saban. And so, Steve Patterson lasted 22 months on the job as athletic director. Then they bring in an interim athletic director who's a 70-year-old, former Texas football player who's a lawyer in Houston, Mike Perrin, great guy, but not an athletic director. I mean, the leadership of Texas athletics absolutely went off the rails, and it was reflected in the coaching decisions. And now the leadership is aligned. They picked Steve Sarkisian, so we'll see how this goes.
Clear something up for me. Is it normal? Because Alabama fans are acting like they're being mistreated by the Texas seating charts. Is this a pretty normal thing for visiting teams coming to town to be scattered nowhere in the lower bowl, all in the upper bowl?
Oh, yeah. When Del Conte came in as the athletic director, he never could understand why Texas was giving visiting fans, primo seats. Now, they know they have to do that in the SEC. I think at least half of the allotment has to be in the lower bowl. And they've actually changed their student seating to accommodate that for when Texas goes to the SEC. I'm still saying in 2024. But they're not accommodating the visiting teams until that time. So, LSU's band was in the upper deck. And it's my understanding the visiting team has to decide how much of their allotment they want to give to the band. And so not quite sure what's going on there, but yeah, the visiting team gets a nice view. Bring your binoculars from the upper deck, but that will change once Texas is in the SEC.
Yeah, they did it for students. So, I mean, that's at least what Del Conte said,
right,
as I went back and read on this, Chip, that they did it to give students better seating somehow. So, I mean, it is hard to criticize that part of it. Without the students, you don't really have a team.
Hey, you may be surprised, though, Chip, with our friends at ATIX, how many Alabama fans you see in the lower bowl on Saturday morning.
Oh, I know. I'm sure. I mean, look, this is probably a road trip they want to come experience, get ready for in the future. And so they're probably paying a premium ticket for that.
Yep. All right, he is Chip Brown, Chip Brown 247 on Twitter. You can read him at horns247.com. Excellent information from there in Austin. Thank you very much for the time, Chip.
All right, guys.
All right, buddy. See you.
Anytime.
Yep. Chip with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.